Now, the VFW has long positioned itself as a nonpartisan organization, and they try to stay away completely from electoral politics. There are a lot of groups, even veterans groups, that run campaign ads. They endorse certain issues. They create super PACs, but the VFW is not one of those organizations. And I respect that. I completely respect that. I know there was a time, however, I guess it was the American Legion that during the Bush years got so very partisan. But anyway, with that in mind, that the VFW tries to remain neutral. They're there as a social organization or a gathering point or whatever you want to call it, a lobbying organization for veterans, period. So with this in mind, it becomes all the more important or notable when the VFW publicly criticizes a presidential candidate in an election year. I mean, this is not what the VFW does. In 2020, for example, an Iranian missile strike. If you remember that, it left several dozen U.S. troops in Iraq who were still stationed in Iraq, left those troops with traumatic brain injuries. And the orange bastard who was president then dismissed the importance of the injuries. Remember what he called them? Oh, a bunch of these guys can complain about headaches. Headaches. This cowardly, obese bastard with the bone spurs, right? And that prompted the VFW to ask him to apologize for trying to denigrate what happened to the troops, to minimize what happened to them. And, of course, the orange bastard ignored the request from the VFW. And then 4 years later, this filthy bastard has insulted veterans again, which has prompted another VFW response. This is what the New York Times reported, quote, "The Veterans of Foreign Wars, a nonpartisan veterans organization, issued a statement condemning Donald Trump's comments that the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a civilian award, was, in his words, much better than the Medal of Honor because service members who receive the nation's highest military honor are often severely wounded or dead, criticizing the marks as asinine and crass. The head of the VFW, L. Liphart, said the remarks made him question whether Trump had the, quote, seriousness and discernment, end quote, necessary to serve as commander-in-chief, end quote. Well, I would, stay completely out of this. I'm not a veteran. I don't speak on behalf of veterans except from an observer and an advocate's point of view. But I would think that the head of the VFW is not completely aware that no question is necessary as to whether Trump has the ability or the seriousness or the respect for the military that would be necessary to serve as commander-in-chief. He was commander-in-chief for 4 years. And he's just a filthy, cowardly bastard who denigrates soldiers and wounded veterans and people in cemeteries, in veteran cemeteries. I mean, what a prick. Now, if you missed it, it was last week. I think it was that bunch of shit that he pulled in behind his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Remember when he had all the food out there and it drew the flies? He was trying to make a point about economics. He would know economics if somebody explained what the word meant to him. But at that event, he introduced somebody who is thrilled every time Palestinians are blown to pieces. I'm talking about Miriam Adelson. Her husband was Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson is dead now. And if there were a God, I would offer up thanks for that. Sheldon Adelson, I don't mind the fact that he was a Zionist, that's his business. But he was such a hater. He spewed hatred in everything he did against Palestinians, against people who were not Jewish. He was just a bad man, a billionaire. And it was somebody that the orange bastard sucked up to in order to get money, and sucked up to Miriam Adelson, too. So at this event in Bedminster, he introduced, again, Miriam Adelson, who, she's has a lot of money that she donates to the Christian fascists in the Republican Party. Figure that one out. Anyway, at that event, when he mentioned her name, he the fact that he had given her, come on, Mike, wake up. The fact that he had given Miriam Adelson back in 2018 the Presidential Medal of Freedom as part of a gesture to thank her and her dead husband for all the hundreds of millions of dollars that they had pumped into his campaign and into ultra-right-wing issues in this country. Sheldon Adelson also put together, before he croaked, a newspaper organization in Israel that, it's my understanding, is now the largest circulation newspaper in the Jewish state, and it's free. And in that newspaper, Adelson promotes Netanyahu. The Adelson, like I say, he's dead, but the organization promotes anything and everything that has to do with eliminating Palestinians. And Eretz Israel should be established. Israel from the Bible, from the Jordan to the sea, from the Golan to Egypt, whatever. The Eretz Israel, this is what they advocate, with no respect whatsoever to the Palestinians. So anyway, during this bullshit ceremony or press conference, whatever it was, at his golf club. Now, I'm not suggesting Miriam Adelson was there. She wasn't, but he mentioned her. And during that, he said, quote, "That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but the civilian version. And it's actually better than the military version because everyone who gets the Congressional Medal of Honor, well, they're soldiers. And they're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. And they're rated equal, these two awards. But she got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and she got it for, and that's enough committees and everything else." What? First of all, what the fuck is he saying? The man is so incoherent. And whether that's a matter of his stupidity and ignorance, or if it's part of his approaching senility, I really don't give a shit. But those unscripted and very unnecessary comments, he didn't have to. If he wanted to thank Miriam Adelson, just say, "Hey, Miriam, thanks a lot for all you've done to fuck over the country. Thank you, Miriam." But the comments about the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which are entirely different, not in Trump's mind, this dumb bastard, but that's what prompted the angry response from the VFW, among many others. And for his part, the Republican National Committee Chair, Michael Whatley, formerly of, I think he was a member of Congress in North Carolina, he responded by telling News Nation's Chris Stirewalt, News Nation being some fucked up, right-wing organization, this is what the head of the RNC said, quote, "Well, look, there is nobody who supports the military, our veterans communities, and all of the military families more than President Trump." End quote. In other words, this dumb shit Whatley, what he's saying is, don't believe your eyes or ears. Don't sit there and listen to the puke that comes out of Trump's mouth and then scratch your head, so to speak, and say, "What? Why was he being so disrespectful of veterans again?" No. Whatley says, who are you going to believe? Your lying ears and eyes? Or me? Or our beloved Christ God, Jesus, Donald Trump, who loves military families more than anybody on earth. Oh, he loves them. Jesus Christ. So, I have one for you, who you believe, your lying eyes and ears, or the commentary on this little podcast. But here's the question. Do you think this guy, Whatley, the head of the Republican National Committee, genuinely believes what he said? Or do you think he's bullshitting himself? Well, not himself. Or do you think he's just trying to bullshit past another open your mouth and search your foot Donald Trump, Christ, God, Jesus moment, where Trump displays yet again what a useless son of a bitch he really is, and how self-referential. He can't even let veterans go by. Whether they're alive or dead, to Trump makes no difference. They're all fools and suckers. And the ones who are dead because they were stupid enough to get in the military and get shot to begin with. They didn't come up with something real creative like, oh, I can't go, I got bone spurs on my foot. This is a bastard, this Donald Trump, filth, who disparages wounded veterans. He says that dead American heroes, or not heroes, just dead American service members, were suckers and losers. He badmouths American servicemen and servicewomen who are captured during combat. He argues with Gold Star families. Gold Star families are families who have had a son or a daughter killed while in service to the country, in the military. This filthy Trump, and yet the Christian assholes in this country just suck up to him. It's just so embarrassing a bit. It's still a bit embarrassing to me because I was brought up in the Christian bullshit a certain way to believe in the gentler mythologies and bullshit stories that you find in the Christian interpretation of the Bible. And I believed that stuff when I was a kid because my grandma used to tell it to me, you know. And who's going to stand there when they're 7 years old and say, oh, Grandma, you're full of shit. That's not true. Well, not me. Oh, my God. And what's even worse, if you remember back when he was a candidate running the first time, he liked to say that he felt, that was the word he used, he felt like he had served in the military because his parents sent him to a military-themed boarding school as a teenager. Not a military school, not one of the service academies. Oh, fuck, no. But to a military-themed boarding school. And then he went so far as to boast that this little expensive prep school gave him, quote, more training militarily than a lot of the guys that go into the military, end quote. And that was, of course, before the orange prick pointed to bone spurs as part of the effort to dodge the draft back in the 60s, right? I got bone spurs. In other words, it's not as if this filthy Christ Jesus God Donald Trump has any credibility at all on any issue that even has the word veteran in it, much less the substance of veterans' issues. Trump is a coward. He's a liar. He treats people who have served and people who have served up to and including dying ostensibly for this country. He, Trump, treats them as, well, his own words, losers and suckers. And remember at the commemoration of World War II, when he was still president, this fucking puke, when he wouldn't go to a commemoration of Americans who died in the invasion of Normandy. He wouldn't go because it was raining out, and he didn't want to get his twisty hair wet. What happened to the Republicans who were always made such a goddamn issue about support the military, salute the flag, march and goose step when you hear the Star-Spangled Banner, stand at attention, take off your hat, put your hand over your heart, salute the flag. And yet they voted for this filthy son of a bitch, and they're going to do it again. The Christian conservatives who are now Christian Nazis. How can you people fucking live with yourselves? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.